Smeagol liked the precious. Smeagol loved the precious. Smeagol wants to keep the precious. My precious. I love the precious. Oh.
What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. My dog thinks I'm so weird, but he accepts me. Today we are talking The Call of the Wild, a brand new movie based on the book starring Harrison Ford and a CGI'd dog. I need you in the comments down below. How did you feel about this movie? What were you looking forward to? And let's get right into it. So, in The Call of the Wild, a sled dog struggles for survival in the wilds of the Yukon. This film was directed by Chris Sanders. It stars Karen Gillan, Harrison Ford, Dan Stevens, Bradley Whitford. At first, I was like, is that Bradley Whitford? And then I'm like, oh, yeah. And he never comes back in the film. But there were a lot of interesting things about this movie. And honestly, before I get into my opinion, I just want to start here. I have not read the book. I literally had no clue what I was in for. But I will say this. This, to me, is the prime example of something that would make for an incredible story within book form, right? It feels like the book is really good. I don't know that much about it. I know a lot of people love it. My wife loves it. My wife's father loves it. They're such big fans. And I can absolutely see why, because there's a very heartfelt story in here. And it is showcased fairly well in this film. This is not a movie that you're going to walk out of going, oh, it's the worst thing I've seen in 2020. It's not a film that you're going to be completely and utterly upset at. But the reason why I walked out a bit underwhelmed, even though I still had that, well, that was cute. It was sweet. It was heartfelt. It had the best of intentions, but I can't figure out to this moment if that was because the story itself was so good. My issue was more so the execution, and obviously we'll get into the CGI element of the film because that was way overdone in my opinion, but I just didn't have the connection to the story that it wanted me to have. And a lot of that comes down to the execution with this film. Like I said, I have no major issues with the characters and even the dog. I mean, the main dog, Buck, obviously cute, some sweet moments. Obviously, it's going to have the audience going aw and laughing and giggling and chuckling, and did its job in that department. But then you get into the actual effects of this film. You look at how much they spent on it, your eyes pop out of your head. I believe they said it was over $150 million as the budget. I'm just like, this? You're going to spend that much on this movie? And not that it's a bad property, but it's just, you're that confident that you're going to make your money? Okay, I get Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford in this movie, absolutely, but that's not to say he doesn't do a good job. I liked Harrison Ford. I loved Buck. I thought Buck was awesome, but I was still missing out on the connection that I wanted to have because of the fact that Buck was full CGI. They did not use actual dogs in this film. Now, obviously, they were used to base the characters off of this and that, but within the movie, it's all CGI, and I guess they used a bit of motion capture as well. And not to say it looks horrible, because at times, it looks really good, but then at other times, it looks not so good. And sometimes the special effects, they fall completely flat, and because of that, you're almost taken out of the film. And I sit back and I wonder, this would have made a wonderful animated film. I feel like they could have done this mystical, fantastical element much better within there, because we established the sense of realism at the beginning of this movie, but we're always being pulled out of that because of what happens within the pack of the dogs and how some animals just don't come across as completely realistic, and maybe that's not what they were trying to do, right? But when you establish that tone at the beginning, and then you have dogs getting jealous of each other, and it almost feels like they're having conversations at times, and I felt like I was watching Scooby-Doo from 2004, and in a movie like Scooby, in a movie like Alvin and the Chipmunks and Sonic, I get it, because you can't get actual animals to play those roles. And because of what Buck goes through in this movie, I mean, we're going underwater, we're jumping, we're going crazy. The stunt, the choreography would have been ridiculous. So I see why they used CGI, but because of that, I never truly felt what they wanted me to feel from Buck, or really all of the dogs. It just felt a bit too wacky for me. It didn't feel like it meshed with the tone of the rest of the movie, because it is a grand scale film at times, especially within that third act. And I loved some of the backgrounds, the set design, the production design. It really is beautiful at times, but at other times they're using cheap filmmaking techniques. There's one moment when somebody gets thrown into a fire and the camera angles the placement. There's a moment where they cut from a wide shot to a close-up and they don't do it correctly. They almost break the rules of filmmaking. I'm just like, oh, that was a really bad cut. So some decisions like that aren't going to bother you if you're a fan of this story. And that's the thing. I feel like they did it as well as they could do it with the tone that they were going for. So I do believe this movie is going to appeal to a lot of people. And all of these negative things I've had to say, I still walked out of it going, oh, that was sweet. I just wish the execution was better, right? I have really no major issues with the story other than the villainous characters. And I don't know what Dan Stevens was doing in this movie, honestly. It was so over the top, and the wacky elements that I was talking about earlier, some of that comes within the dogs and how that comes across as unrealistic, and the rest of it comes within the villains because it was just way too much for me, a lot of overacting. Some of it comes down to the direction, and I think these actors are really, really good, so I was questioning, and then the fact that they never come back to the family that is established at the beginning of the movie. I don't want to give anything away about the plot, but I was just like, what happened? I mean, did they get sad? Like, can we show, did they not care? I was just like, oh, okay. All right. And honestly, I feel awful because these dog movies are always coming out, and sometimes I'll be underwhelmed with the script and the characters and the plot, this and that, but I always love the heart at the center of these stories, and that's no different here, right? I think a lot of people are going to walk out enjoying this movie, getting exactly what they paid for, and that is all fine and dandy, man. I have no problems with that. Some really good things about it for sure. So before I give you guys my score, if you enjoyed this review, if you like what we're doing on this channel, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and go watch Togo on Disney+. It's a different movie, it's a different story, but they use real dogs, and I was very happy. That's one dog movie I can look at and go, yeah, executed well all the way. But for the Call of the Wild, I'm still going slightly over that midway point. I'm going to 52%, and I just want to reiterate one more time. I know people are going to love this movie because it's sweet and it's quirky, and they may have read the book, and they may love what they get out of this, and I completely understand that. But my question for you guys is, if you did read the book, how did you feel about the film? Because my father-in-law, he read the book, but he saw the trailer and said, nope, not The Call of the Wild, so I'm curious to see how others feel. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Stay tuned because we have a lot of things coming out this weekend, which means a lot of videos. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right. You guys are the best. I'll see you soon.